Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into this Gemini full moon happening on December 15th. Before I go into this lunation, I wanted to let everyone know I have gone over ad nauseum the offerings that I have. The Christmas special, the Sagittarius birthday special, and also the Goddess Asteroid series. I just finished over the weekend my first class, the first lecture going over Lilith and Ceres. And if you want to purchase that recording, you can head over to my website and email me, and I will send that to you once you pay for it after I send you an invoice. If that's something you want to do, if you didn't get to show up for that class or you decided maybe you do want that recording. All of the information about all of my other specials are on my website. You can just go to the booking page and look that over to see if you would want to purchase one of those offerings. The Christmas special I decided to do as my gift to you all, and it is definitely a $145 discount for 3 readings, only cost $155. And again, that is my gift to you guys for the holiday season. So, without further ado, let me go into this Gemini full moon. So, a couple of things that we want to think about before I pull up the chart and I point out the astrological conversations. If you go back to June 6th of this year, that is when we had the Gemini new moon. And so this full moon happening on the 15th of December is really this culmination of this cycle, of this lunation cycle, dealing with all things Martian, Gemini, um, not Martian, Mercurial, excuse me, and dealing with the sign of Gemini. So when we have a full moon, that is whenever the sun is opposing the moon, whereas a new moon is when the sun and the moon are conjunct. And that is speaking to a new 6-month evolutionary cycle. And at the full moon, really, if you want to think about it archetypically, that sun is opposing the moon. And what it's doing is it's illuminating the sun, these emotional moon dynamics of a Gemini nature in order for us to understand the emotional dynamics that are surfacing at this time, whether or not we need more integration or whether or not we need to oppose something. And so it's this culmination of this 6-month cycle of all the work that we've been doing since June 6th, dealing with these energies of Gemini. So let me kind of talk to you a little bit about a moon in Gemini, and then we can get into these astrological conversations happening during this lunation. So a moon in Gemini, when we're dealing with the moon, we're speaking to the ways in which we nurture and find security within ourselves. And when we're looking at a lunar cycle, we're dealing with the ways in which to nurture and to gain security on an emotional level, dealing with, in this case, Gemini. Gemini is dealing with the ways in which we nurture ourselves through expression or the messages that we give or the messages that we receive, the conversations that we have, the way that we express ourselves. It's also the ways in which we gather information or where we feel drawn to take in more information. And with this being a full moon in Gemini, being ruled by Mercury and Sagittarius that is stationing during this lunation, it's really anytime a planet is stationing, it's an intensification of that energy because that planet is appearing to stand still in the sky. So it's almost putting like an exclamation point on that archetypal energy. And with this full moon being ruled by Mercury and Sagittarius, it's really speaking to learning about one's truth, learning about one's authenticity, learning about how to communicate our authenticity, how to do it in a way that feels sincere and honest, and not where we're overcompensating through the ways in which that we're expressing ourselves. So it's also where we've been taking in information around what our beliefs are. Sag is correlating with our beliefs. And so it's really putting this exclamation point on these dynamics and speaking to what it is one is needing to express at this moment in time. So let me share this chart with you, and then we'll get more into this. So this moon is happening in the 6th house. So it's really speaking to this dynamic of a duality, which Gemini is already dual in nature. So it can be around bringing up emotional dynamics where we have choices to make. But this is also, this moon is falling in the 6th house. And so that can be where Gemini is the outer expression of Mercury, where we're going out and we're seeking out information, or we're having conversations. And in the 6th house, it's really about assimilating this information and improving upon it through our own correlations. And because this moon is ruled by Mercury in the 11th house, stationed in Sagittarius, it's really about decluttering. 6th house can be about purging and purifying through improving. And the 11th house is very much about liberating. So we have this dynamic of we're wanting to culminate these areas of our life where we've taken in information and we're needing to improve upon it, especially in the ways that we articulate it, and how we express ourselves in an authentic way, Sag. But the need to liberate from false beliefs that are impeding upon us expressing ourselves authentically, or the need to observe more what feels true and to tap into our intuition, and then in true 6th house fashion to have an inner gnosis around these dynamics. So that Mercury is also ruled by Jupiter retrograde and Gemini in the 5th house, which is definitely about the need for us to self-actualize through throwing off these old beliefs and then expanding upon our truths. This is also interesting because there is dynamic tension in this chart, because the moon is entering a square to the south node and the north node. And the area that we really want to concentrate on is this north node in the 3rd house. So again, it's this other repeating signature of Gemini energy because it's held within the 3rd house, which is the natural house of Gemini. And so what this is speaking to is, as things are illuminated around beliefs and truths, whether they need to be healed, seeing as the sun is in the 12th house, it's having us to act, to create action, North Node in Aries, on self-improving on the information of ourselves and what it is that we're called to take in and what it is that we're called to purge. That's no longer resonating on an authentic level. And the facilitator of this North Node is this Mars retrograde in the 7th house. It's conditioned by Cancer, which is ruled by this moon. And Mars is opposing Venus in Aquarius. So let me stop this and speak about this a little bit. What this is really reflecting to us is, during this lunation, throughout this week, there are dynamics around our relationships that we could be triggered externally around that is really pointing this way to what needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved upon. How can we learn more about this dynamic going on? Mars is acting as that trigger for us to be that is exposing these dynamics of where things aren't quite right and how we can improve upon them through being in self-love and self-respect. So it's also looking at where our emotional security lies within the patterns that we perpetuate. And Venus has been trining that South Node and Libra throughout this week. And Venus in Aquarius trying that South Node in Libra is really bringing up all of these prior relational dynamics of where maybe we're holding on too tightly to them, where we're needing to transform them, seeing as Venus is in Aquarius, where we're needing to liberate from over-identifying or through holding on too tightly to the old ways of relational dynamics. And again, that Mars opposing Venus and ruling that North Node that the moon is entering into a square with is really speaking to there are triggers that can come up throughout this week and 2 weeks after this full moon that really help us to moon in the sixth house improve upon these relational dynamics. It can confront us with where we're needing to let go of something, the ways in which we communicate with others, seeing as the moon is in Gemini, how we can do that more sincerely and more authentically. And Venus in Aquarius is ruled by Uranus and Taurus retrograde, which is falling in the fourth house of that chart. So this is really speaking to this repeating signature of this need to have a transformative process on our inner relationship to self and to really observe where we're holding on too tightly with certain emotional dynamics that have really run its course, right? This can be like you're in a relationship and you want to tell this person the same thing over and over and over again because you feel like they're not hearing you. And what one could be doing is Mercury in Sag, moon in the sixth, denying the truth that this person isn't willing to hear you. You know, this can come up all types of ways. And the psychological emotional dynamic is where it kind of brings in this Aries energy, especially Chiron in areas of, I need to prove to you. Let me kind of try to back in this way or go this way now because I feel like you're not hearing me. You're not doing what it is that I want you to do. The outcome or the expectation I have isn't aligning with your actions. So maybe I can force my way in by expressing it this way. Maybe I'm not expressing it in the best, most perfect moon in the sixth house way. So I'm going to try to back into it this way. And really, this Uranus in the fourth house in mutual reception with Venus and Venus trining that South Node is about releasing this and allowing oneself to just observe in order to make a correct choice, to discern. So much of a moon in the sixth house is someone who's learning discernment and not denying or making excuses for patterns. It's about improving upon those through not making excuses or denying it. So there's a lot of this coming up. And whenever we release old expectations and ideals around these dynamics, we get to discover more. It actually opens the door for us to discover more about ourselves. And the more we discover about ourselves in an authentic way, as this chart is highlighting, the more we can actually improve upon areas in our life. Because then if we know what is authentic, Mercury and Sag, what feels authentic to each one of us individually, we can actually improve upon the areas that no longer are feeling like they align with ourselves, especially our values. The other thing I want to mention is that this chart, its ascendant is Capricorn, meaning that it's also ruled by Saturn and Pisces in the second house, and its ruler, Neptune, is in Pisces in the second house. So there's a new evolutionary cycle that's wanting to start as we culminate these old ways of thinking, Gemini, or understanding things about ourselves, as we liberate from the things that don't feel authentic or true for each one of us, as we liberate from the old beliefs and where we've given meaning or over-identified with it, or the ideals, especially around relationships, through Mars being activated and triggering areas in our life of where things aren't quite working out and how we need to cultivate different patterns of awareness. The Capricorn rising in this chart is, as we do that, it naturally births a new structure, Capricorn. And this new birthing of this new structure, facilitated by Saturn and Pisces in the second house, is actually healing to our inner relationship to self. It's helping us to cultivate new structures. So we're still kind of feeling the energy of Pluto in Capricorn, the need to metamorphose old structures. And this lunation is really speaking to improving upon the ways in which we express, articulate, send messages, communicate, or the things that we're attracted to discovering about ourselves. And that helps us to restructure our consciousness. It helps us to heal our inner relationship to self. And it allows us to have more compassion and faith about this process. And that is Saturn and Neptune falling in that second house in the sign of Pisces. Saturn in the second house in Pisces is also conditioned by Aquarius. Aquarius is on that second house cusp. So again, it's pulling in the repeating signature of this Uranian influence, Uranus and Taurus. Second house, Taurus. Repeating signatures everywhere all over this chart. But what this is speaking to with Aquarius on that second house is the need to liberate from old dynamics of self-preservation or survival, where sometimes when we're in self-preservation, we are actually abandoning ourselves. It's that South Node in Libra. And so it can be where there can be old patterns where on an inner psychological level, we're over-identifying with them and we're needing to purge and to liberate from them through observing. How is this affecting my relationship to self? Where do I need to dissolve old ideals around how to be and what other people's expectations of me are? And as we liberate from these dynamics, i.e., conditioning, things that have been learned, as we improve upon this, as we tap into our truths and our authenticity further, this truly has a healing quality that's going on. So this is really about recovering one's own authenticity to have healthier self-esteem, to be able to ground within oneself, to return home to oneself, as opposed to how we've learned to be within society. So the other dynamic that I want to speak to is that there is, on the midheaven of this chart is Scorpio. And so this can be confronting us in a truly scorpionic level with where we've had power dynamics with authorities in our life, or where we have or needing to confront where we feel powerless to be our own authority. And with Pluto in the first house of this chart conjunct Ceres and Venus in Aquarius, it's where we're confronting and observing where we feel like we might have lost this part of ourselves to be sovereign and to be our own authority, and where we're kind of doing or living for other people, or where we're finding ourselves trapped in this dynamic of this isn't a relational pattern that is really where I'm giving my authority away. So this can bring up all of this content for you to look at it objectively on a psychological and emotional level for liberation to occur. And that liberation is also coming in the form of Ceres, where we can actually recover this dynamic about ourselves in a natural way. It's where we can also be looking at the losses that we've had within community or different structures in our life, whether that be family, seeing as that Scorpio's on the 10th house cusp and it's ruled by that Pluto conjunct Ceres, or where we've lost friends or we feel isolated or alienated, it's helping us to confront these dynamics so that way we don't continuously project the past onto the present moment. I think a lot of us, I mean, honestly, this is a universal experience. When we haven't healed some type of trauma, Aquarius, Uranus, 11th house, especially regarding our personal truth, where something has affected us from truly understanding ourselves, um, we will tend to repeat the cycle over and over and over again. And it's usually where we're being confronted with, I have no control over this except for what I do. Um, and so this full moon is wanting us to culminate these dynamics of where we're projecting abandonment, loss, betrayal, not feeling seen, heard, understood, onto the present moment. I mean, I can't tell you, I've experienced this, I've had clients experience this. They get into a trauma response where it's like something from the past, whether it be a prior lifetime or something that's happened in the present lifetime, maybe earlier on. They have an immense amount of fear around it happening again. And so they'll actually start to manifest that happening. Because they just keep projecting the past. And so this is a full moon where it's wanting us to confront our own thinking around these dynamics of how do you want to move forward? Do you want to keep regurgitating the past, or do you want to improve upon it and set yourself free? That moon in the sixth house is wanting us to go to the polarity, which is the 12th, which is truly about tapping into one's intuition, knowing that we're connected to something much larger than ourselves, source, that can be an inner guide for us whenever we have the ability to listen to ourselves from within. That's seen with Saturn and Neptune in the second house, Uranus and Taurus in the fourth of this chart. And what it's helping us do is navigate these waters into clear space of old ways of thinking. So it's about improving upon this and simplifying life through learning how to trust oneself and one's intuition. Gemini wants us to go to its polarity, Sag, and to really lean into the intuition. Mercury is in Sagittarius, stationing, ruling this lunation. It's this repeating signature of really needing to tap into the intuition as an inner guide. The other thing that I want to say is that this lunation can bring up a couple of other dynamics. One, we could be having confrontations with people verbally, Gemini, where one's belief is being opposed by another's belief, or one has a belief that they're trying to project onto the other person and it's not aligning with their personal truth. That's not who I am. You're saying I'm someone, and that is not who I am, right? It can be kind of this darker dimension of others' projections, where it's really what that's speaking to is you don't see me. You're not understanding me. You're not seeing me clearly. That can be someone else projecting their past onto you. And so there can be conversations around this, but that Mars-Venus opposition is really asking for us to pick our battles. Is this something worth talking about? Does this person have the ability to hear you? Or does this dynamic need to dissolve? What are you willing to put up with? Are you making excuses? Are you denying something? Are you denying the truth of something or a situation? This is also where, on a collective level, we have these kind of humanitarian energies happening in this chart. And there can be people who are wanting to come out and to speak and to give a message around humanitarian efforts. And so, and it's to help improve upon community on a global level. So we could be seeing that happening this week. We can also be seeing the distortion of this, more lies or propaganda coming out that is really self-serving. I actually just saw something yesterday that made me think of this full moon. Was my youngest kiddo. I allow him to watch YouTube whenever I'm in the room, and I always tell him to keep it to educational things, and I kind of police it. Um, so he was watching something educational, and then you know how YouTube has the loop. Something new will turn on after that video is done. Well, it was a kid's cartoon which was talking about political propaganda. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, new rule. Let's take a break from YouTube, even if I'm in the room. Because if I wasn't paying attention, I wouldn't have heard what they were saying. And it was a cartoon. It looked like a child's thing, and it was like this indoctrination. So it's like needing to really tap into one's intuition around what is true and having discernment around information that we're taking in right now, and only taking in information that feels like it's resonating authentically with your own values, because we are in a transformative process right now. All of this Aquarian energy is truly wanting us to um, accelerate and transform our values and our needs and the ways in which we go out into the world and build community. This also helps to facilitate in who we attract. So Venus deals with what we attract. And so as we are transforming our inner relationship to self and also our values, this is going to help us to attract things that are better in alignment with who we are on a um, authentic level. The other dynamic that I want to speak to, and I'm going to share this chart for you all once again to point this out, is I don't have a glyph, but what you can see here is here's asteroid Lilith in the 12th house and in Capricorn. It's ruled by this Saturn and Pisces in the second, and it is square the nodes. The resolution is this south node falling in the 9th house. All right. So let's talk about this. Ceres helps us facilitate in the process with Lilith, whereas Ceres is about the loss and the recovery and how we nurture ourselves in the recovery process. We might have lost community. We might have felt alienated, isolated, and now we're trying to recover the inner community with self and to attract like-minded individuals, throughout this process. This is one way this can go. It's facilitating in this process with Lilith, who Lilith is about the most undistorted, wild, and free expression of oneself at a soul level. And through transit, it's helping us to look at how we can champion and fortify that within ourselves. And Lilith in Capricorn is really about this need to continue this work of dissolving old structures that have perpetuated imbalances, South Node in Libra. While on the flip side, nurturing, using Ceres to nurture this process of restructuring, Capricorn, that can promote Saturn and Pisces in the second house, healing to our inner relationship to self and with others, South Node in Libra, 9th house, through understanding our truth and being rooted in these laws of giving, sharing, and inclusion. And that means for yourself as well. Because oftentimes when we're thinking about that, we're like, yeah, I do that for everyone else, but do you do it for yourself? Are you needing to restructure and to actually think about yourself and to give to yourself so you can also receive? So there's a lot of healing that's wanting to occur with this. And on a more global level, this is where we're needing to restructure society and align ourselves with the soul root that is definitely our nature is to be rooted in natural law. That South Node in the 9th house, the laws of giving, sharing, and inclusion as a way to recover community, Ceres and Aquarius on a global level that is rooted in how we share our resources in an equitable way, how there needs to be a restructuring within society, and that restructuring needs to be where We are aligning our values, our laws, our taboos, all of that within the realm of universal, Lilith in the 12th, and natural, South Node in the 9th house, laws that permit this, that help to balance these Libran scales. And then whenever it will naturally pull in that North Node and Aries and the 3rd, where we get to learn more about how to do this. And that Mars and Leo is about creatively actualizing through community in a more maternal. Cancer is on that 7th house cusp, maternal instead of patriarchal way, where we're actually facilitating in this process of nurturing the creative force of creative actualization that's rooted in love and inclusivity and giving, and how that helps us to look at gender roles and equality, all the things that really we're seeing being highlighted on a global level. Again, this goes back to that lunation, 6th house full moon in Gemini, the need to improve upon this knowledge, whether it be for yourself or within the collective right now, as a way to restructure and to nurture the inner community with self and then the outer community with others. So this is your Gemini full moon. I just want you to know, if this is coming down to your personal relationships, if you're needing to express yourself, just remember that this lunation, if you're needing to have a conversation with someone, this lunation is giving us the opportunity to really improve upon the ways in which we communicate with others. So if you have a trigger moment where all of a sudden something's being ignited through that Mars-Venus opposition, it's wanting us to not over-identify with the past and project it onto the present. And it's wanting us to communicate in a sincere and authentic way that can be objective. Mercury stationing in Sagittarius in the 11th house, ruling that moon. So it gives an opportunity for us to have healing conversations and to heal communication styles. That also doesn't mean that just because you are doing this in an integral way, that someone is going to meet you there. That's where the South Node and Libra trining Venus gives an opportunity to see if you need to let go of something because of the feedback that you receive. The last thing that I do want to mention, I almost forgot, is that Mars and Leo is sextile the South Node, and then Mercury and Sagittarius is sextile the South Node, and Mercury and Mars are trining each other. So what this really speaks to is all of this South Node Libra work that we've been doing and aligning ourselves with truth as a way to balance these scales. There can be these trigger moments that happen that are asking for us to really set into motion Mars, acts of love and kindness through that trying to Mercury, expressing ourselves honestly and sincerely, and then those both sextile to that South Node as a way to heal prior relational dynamics. So that can also be having a hard conversation where you're needing to be in self-love and self-dignity and be honest with things just aren't working. And this can be any one-on-one relationship. It can be someone at work. It can be someone in your family. It can be a sibling is another way that this can come up. It can be a friend. There's all of the energy that is highlighting these types of relationships. It can also be, seeing as Gemini is the ruler of neighbors, it can be neighbors. There can be something that you're needing to express, and to not be reactive, but to observe what your truth is and what another person's truth is, and then trying to come to a middle ground, but knowing that we can't control an outcome. So just aligning oneself with your sincere efforts to heal prior dynamics through speaking truth. And then that necessary feedback through conversations will absolutely help you to either let go or to transform in any type of way. what these dynamics are. And it gives an opportunity if you've had an issue with projecting the past onto the present, this gives opportunity over the next 2 weeks to improve upon not doing that through having the hard conversations, through expressing oneself authentically, by sharing a message, by just showing up and continuing to learn about one's authenticity through a conversation with others. It is imperative, though, for those who like to get caught up in this is like a sixth house Libra dynamic of where you could be giving your power away and you're just wanting to take in all types of information because you want to be able to make the perfect choice. So you need to know every single detail, every little fact that you can. A moon in Gemini in the sixth. You're going to have to go to that polarity of Sag and trust your intuition. The ruler of this moon is Mercury in Sag stationing. This cannot be where you're outsourcing a choice that you need to make. This is where you need to go internally and to trust your gut and your intuition and your inner listening to make a choice that is rooted in your own discernment. And that is how you can heal these dynamics on an emotional level where you're feeling insecure. It's by learning to trust oneself. So that is the last thing that I wanted to say. And I hope you all have a happy full moon. I feel like this is a really healing full moon. It's one that would be great for journaling, sitting out by the fire, doing automatic writing, tapping into the emotions that are coming up for you, and being able to discern what that feels like, what that sensory dynamic is, so you can get to know yourself even more authentically. And then that way, if you need to express yourself, you have language for it that resonates on an authentic level. So give yourself grace. This is a very healing full moon, I feel like. It can really heal our psychological and emotional dynamics whenever we are looking at the ways in which we talk or communicate with ourselves and with others, or even how we're classifying things on an internalized level. Some of that might be old projected beliefs, and you're needing to discern better language to speak to yourself to classify even what you're feeling. And this full moon can really highlight all of that in order to improve upon it. So I can't wait to see more of you all here. I have a few spaces left over the next week and a half. The last week of December, I am taking off. I won't be back until I believe the 5th or 6th of January. So if you're wanting to get in before the new year, I would book now. Like I said, I have a few spots left. And if not, I will see you during the new year. I will definitely still be posting videos and updates. So happy full moon, and I will see you all soon.